I'm here. It's Todd Atkins, and today I'm going to interview Mike Davis, who's been on my show before, but we mostly talked about Lytesout podcast. We may talk about that a little bit, but we're going to talk more about his background. So I'm going to bring him in here in just a moment. Mike, how you doing?
What's up, Todd Atkins?
So, last time I had you here, well, if you could just introduce yourself for people, if anybody's watching not familiar with you.
Okay, so I'm, one of the co-hosts for the Lytesout podcast with Chris Lytle. We release 2 episodes a week where we kind of really dig into fighters' lives and careers, and we get some pretty good interviews. Out of all of our downloads, I think we just broke the 200,000 mark, and we're picking up steam. I wish money would be attached to that, but maybe one day.
And I appreciate you taking time out to do this. Now, I didn't even know that you were behind Ignite Fights. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I started promoting fights when I was, probably late 20s, early 30s, and it was Brawl at Bourbon Street. Then it turned into Cutthroat MMA, where I probably did 150 events under Cutthroat MMA. And then I had a business partner that went to jail, and it was just bad news. Then I did United Combat League, sold that, and Ignite Fights picked me up. Jeremy Bjornberg is the promoter. I help him with it. Something, we're probably like 6 or 7 events in. I did another maybe 50 events under the United Combat League name. So I probably promoted or been involved on a grassroots level about 230 of my own events, and then maybe another 100 other people's events that I really helped out in. So I've been involved with the mixed martial arts scene for, about a little over 20 years, at least here in the Midwest.
So that was in the Chicago area where you're doing most of that?
Chicago area, but I also worked with Miguel Arate, who's also one of the people on the show with the Lytesout podcast. He did Hook and Shoot, Abu Dhabi, Euphoria, Bodog. I guarantee I'm missing one along the way. I mean, some really high-end shows, and Miguel always kind of carried me with him. So Miguel was a New York guy. I'm a Chicago guy. We just always got along. We like talking MMA history, and now that's what we're doing on the Lytesout podcast. So I also I've got a trial run with Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu Pro, and that event is happening in Orlando, April 16th. You can register through ajptour.com, and it's my first event with them. Hopefully we can roll it into additional events. So yeah, I worked for Abu Dhabi for a while as well. I've been around a few blocks. I know you were living in Japan, lived in Hawaii. Those are 2 just very cultish MMA circuits and scenes. So while I was driving around all over the Midwest, kind of, seeing a good fight here or there, dude, you're sitting in the first 5 rows of a Pride Grand Prix, which is completely insane.
Right, but you were involved. It sounds interesting what you're saying. For example, you kind of glossed over, but you talked about selling. What goes into that? Did you hear me?
No, I'm for some reason I'm having.
Okay. Basically, I had asked. You had kind of glossed over, but you talked about you sold a promotion that you had, and most people probably have no idea what that entails. Kind of maybe take us through that a little bit.
Well, let's start with my first business partner. So essentially, when you want to get to the next level, Todd, how long have you been around the MMA scene?
Yeah, since the beginning. Yeah, mostly.
So how many sharks, swindlers, con men, have you actually crossed paths with trying to make a name for themselves in the MMA world?
That I personally know.
Shitloads. Well, but you know they're there.
That I know of, yeah, a lot.
So on my first organization, Cutthroat MMA, I was doing maybe 2 to 3 events a month, like all over the Chicago, Indiana region, and I needed money to kind of grow it out more. You know, you're never like the worst thing a promotion can say is, well, we're going to be the UFC. We're going to be the UFC. The only thing that you could really be is a feeder show. And even back then, a lot of people, their egos wouldn't allow that. But you knew when they said, no, we're going to compete with the UFC, you knew they probably didn't know what they were talking about. But to be a feeder show is something significant. So, you know, that is actually the goal that I've always wanted to have, is to have like a really good feeder show. So in my first organization, Cutthroat MMA, guy owned 7 or 8 Carlson Gracie gyms, and came on board. I knew he was a little goofy, but he definitely had money. He had probably had $1 million in cars, another $3.5 million house, office with 100 employees, and then he started using steroids and then pretending that he was also a fighter, and it was like watching a plane get shot out of the sky. He ended up doing 8 years in jail, but it was, I mean, it's a crazy process. So after that, you kind of become hesitant, but as long as everybody does what it is they say they can do, then there isn't going to be any issues. And when you have a real job, like I was in law enforcement for 15 years. I retired about 1.5 years ago. You can always pay your bills. And if you can always pay your bills, you're not, even if the fighters are not going to be that unhappy with you, as long as this is my word, here it is, there's the cash, whatever happens, happens. You just try to give them dignity and respect. And, if you got 10 fights, that means there's 20 fighters, half are going to lose. And as long as you're kind to the people that maybe didn't get their hand raised, c'est la vie. So getting people that know how to raise money is very difficult, as I'm sure you have experienced. So on the second organization that I sold, it was a nice thing to do. They got my library, they got my contacts. I mean, it was a good thing. It was a good thing for everybody involved. I was happy doing it. They were happy.
Did you sell it to the UFC?
No. You know what it is? I'm contractually, I'm not trying to get sued.
Okay.
So, I'm tap dancing over here. So,
yeah.
So in essence, no, I sold to them. Everything was good. They're happy. I'm happy. I had stock in the company. I sold it. So, I'm out completely with them. At which point, I can't promote. I don't want to promote, but I come in and I do play-by-play. I do the media, and that's when Ignite FC, Jeremy Bjornberg, who used to be SEG out in Minnesota, he changed his name to kind of, reinvent, his brand, and he brought me on full time. So it's been fantastic. Jeremy, pardon me?
You were talking about you can't promote, so that was part of the deal with the sale?
and I don't want to. I'm done. I'm done promoting. It's such a thankless process, and it's very difficult, especially when you're not a thief. If you're a thief and you're, and you can kind of spin a bunch of plates, and I can't do that. I'm terrible at getting sponsorship, and I can't lie to somebody to open up their, oh, we're going to make so much money, let's just do this show. It's no, we're probably going to lose our ass. No one's going to be happy with you, and you're going to have a need to want to do it again the following month. I mean, that's the life of a promoter.
Now I'm wondering, do you think that might have happened with someone like Bjorn Rebney, who we haven't seen since he left Bellator?
Well, Bjorn is an interesting study. At Bellator, what's your opinion on how he handled himself?
How he handled himself?
With the fighters.
Yeah, probably not the best. Yeah,
I'd say horrible is the word
yeah.
you're looking for. So, and the examples that I would give is Sam Alvey. He treated horribly. He treated Dave Herman, sued Dave Herman, probably cost Dave Herman, I don't know, $40,000 in legal fees. It gets resolved to where Dave has to fight for them one more time, which is something he would have done anyway. And then Bjorn just doesn't do it. Like Bjorn would use people as examples, and he would really try to hurt them and be like very public about it. Like if I was going to put my conspiracy theory, my conspiracy theory hat on, I would say Bjorn Rebney knew he was getting axed at Bellator, and that's when he started talking about fighter unions and things of that nature, because the people that were pulling the strings um, would probably be hurt by that. Like we've got a couple theories going on. At one point, I believed. I mean, he was one time an employee of the UFC, as the current UFC or the Bellator president, and some people would even argue that he was probably an employee while heading Bellator at times where he wasn't supposed to have an interaction with the UFC, based on some of his moves. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Bjorn Rebney he got kicked out of boxing and he got kicked out of MMA. It's two golf clubs he's not allowed to play in anymore.
Yeah, I was curious because you're talking about you can't promote, but in his case, since the fighter union thing,
Well, I don't want to promote, so I think it's more. Yeah.
I mean, he's fallen off the face of the earth since the fighter union thing.
Well, he got a sweetheart deal. Essentially, like when Bellator first came along, um, it was like a Hispanic-based organization, which was absolutely brilliant at its time because, like, when you look at the popularity of mixed martial arts and then you look at the country of Mexico and boxing, like the Latin community in regards to boxing far outweighs anything that the UFC even currently has. So, his goal was to kind of educate that community into mixed martial arts, where wrestling is not a very popular sport, and kind of push it forward. And it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, it was on the Spanish. I think it was on ESPN for Spanish. I think when he first kind of came on board, and yeah, he got a real good contract, and he was a boxing guy that came over. He actually showed up at a few of my local events in Chicago because he was living here at the time, and met with him briefly. I knew his name. I didn't really know who he was, even though I come from a boxing background. A couple of my friends in the boxing community that have fought for world titles all called me and they just said, "Dude, stay away, stay away." But like I left him a message, he never called me back, and about 4 or 5 months later, Bellator is rolling out.
I mean, I thought the Bellator event was pretty cool, the concept.
I agree. I think they had to work a lot of kinks out initially. They had a couple champions that would have to sit 6 or 7 months before they were able to fight again because they had to run the tournament format through again. I listen, man. Anytime there's fights and people get paid, I think it's good. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I enjoy Bellator. I think Antonio McKee's kid AJ is a superstar.
But why do you think he's vanished into thin air? I mean, I don't think anybody's heard anything of him since that fighter union thing fell apart.
I mean, I can only guess. I mean, do you know something I don't?
No.
If I'm guessing, probably the same thing with boxing. He handled himself terribly. People in the MMA world don't just how shady the boxing world is. Like it's disgusting how gross and grimy the boxing world behind the scenes is. And he came from that world and was thrown out of it. So, it's like asking a skunk not to spray. Like I mean, I would love to get him. I might shoot him. I think I still have his phone number. It's funny you mentioned his name. I didn't expect it to get brought up. I had a Matt Giancarlo who match made for me for a couple of the organizations I work for. He even mentioned, dude, you guys got to get Bjorn. And, if I got Bjorn, I mean, you could sit there and throw dirt at him, but you're not going to get the interview you want. I'd rather just kind of let him lay it out and let people kind of guess from there.
But, I mean, when most people disappear from a sport, they don't vanish in thin air. And he kind of has.
Yeah, but he's not an MMA guy. He never was. So
but
he's just somebody that got a contract.
You'd think he might be out there giving his 2 cents about an event every now and then. He's nowhere to be seen.
I wonder if he got paid to go away and can't do an interview, kind of like Joe Silva.
Right.
Like Joe Silva, he was thrown out of the UFC. He retired, but not allowed to give interviews and lays low, doesn't even show up to events.
Right.
I think Joe Silva, I get where you're going with Bjorn Rebney, and I don't know, I never really looked at him as an MMA guy. I just looked at him as a boxing guy that had a contact, got a contract, gave it a shot, got thrown out.
Mm.
I mean, you could say, who was the Show XC people? Come on, was it Skellboy? Come on, give me his name. Gary, where Kimbo got knocked out.
Oh, well, I mean, wasn't
Gary Shaw?
See?
Yeah, I mean, Gary Shaw. There's another boxing guy. Got a contract, gave MMA a shot. And, Todd, as I'm sure you remember, when we were going to these MMA events, the boxing community frowned upon it. Like, you're looking like late 90s, early 2000s. Like, it was like a bad word to the boxing community. And it's just a fad. It's just a fad. It was kind of a bad word around them. And I'm from the south side of Chicago in like a heavy boxing community. So I was like committing a mortal sin, even promoting the events around town.
Now, what was your background in boxing? Because you said that's where you originally came from.
Yeah, amateur boxing. I probably got like 40, 50 fights as an amateur. Scottsdale Park, Alfonso Ratliff, the guy that Mike Tyson beat up pretty good. Those are some of my trainers, obviously not at Scottsdale Park, but Alfonso Ratliff trained me personally as well. Angel Manfredi, I used to see him as a teenager quite a bit. Angel was a real unique case. He was, especially as a teenager, kind of watching him develop. He was interesting. Montel Griffin's from here.
Yeah, I've had him on my show.
Pardon me?
I've had Angel on my show. I was a huge fan of Angel from boxing.
Yeah, Angel's a tough kid, man. Tough kid. He didn't have a lot of amateur fights. He used to fight over at Gage Park. He probably had 13, 14 AMI fights, and then he turned pro. And, his first loss is against a local guy that had one eye, and he got up to like 10 or 14-0, and then he realized he had one eye, and they wouldn't let him fight anymore. And guy legitimately could have been a world champion. Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched Angel fight with Arturo Gatti a bunch of times.
Yeah.
That was a good fight. And he, I was just talking to some guys about, kind of the HBO boxing stable, where you could see boxing every Saturday night on HBO. And boxing now is so scattered, you really don't get that experience.
No, and I thought Jim Lampley always did a really good job. I really enjoyed his play-by-play.
Yeah, I love the program. So a lot of those old school HBO boxing guys, I remember, like someone was asking about it this morning. I was talking to somebody on their show, and I just rattled off probably 30, 40 guys.
Winky Wright was one of my favorite guys to watch back in the day. He's got a gym in Florida now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think next time I'm running around, I think he's in the St. Pete area. Next time I'm running around at my brother lives in Tampa. I got to get my picture taken with Winky Wright. That guy was awesome.
So let's kind of talk about, so you were doing some promotions. Maybe talk about obviously you followed the UFC like we all did. Maybe talk about some of your early memories of following that.
Of the UFC?
Yeah.
All right, so I always kind of liked the. I mean, I got my dog's named Gracie, so you automatically everyone's a fan of the Gracies. But I like the cartoon kind of throw off guys, like the Harold Howards. I liked Fang Maturi. Those guys that were going to beat you with techniques and breathing and pressure points. Keith Hackney's a local guy. When Keith Hackney, one of his students fought Pat Miletich at like a Chicago challenge, Pat from the corner, or Keith from the corner was yelling, Eagle Claw, hit him with the Eagle Claw. And yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guy I'd love to talk to, Keith Hackney.
He had a heating and air conditioning company. He's a pretty easy guy to get a hold of. I'll get you his number.
And by the way, I just brought Angel in here. Angel, we were just talking about you. Yeah, he's in here now watching.
Dude, he's a tough. That's a bad boy, man. He works over at Team Cologne, Steve Cologne, over in Northwest Indiana, in the Maryville area. And Steve Cologne, like the Midwest, is blessed with like a lot of high-end gyms, and Team Cologne is arguably in that top 1, 2, or 3 position, and I'm including Rufus Sport, Pura Vida. I'm including those in that category. Like Team Cologne is legit as they come.
And what was did you, like you talked about Angel, did you knew him from back then, or?
Angel Manfredi in the local scene here in Chicago fought, I want to say he fought 12 or 13, 14 times at the most. He was not like an amateur fighter, but he had legendary wars at the Gary Police Athletic League that everybody talked about. Everybody. I had a trainer named Pat Pearson. And now Angel, I mean, he doesn't get as much respect as he should, in my opinion.
And so let's kind of get back to these colorful guys. You said you kind of, but from the, as I was following it as a fan, you had that interest of how big can it get, these kind of things. You're kind of watching, the Frank Shamrock early, I would say, is kind of like the first maybe crossover star in the UFC at that time.
Well, which is Igor Zinoviev fight, Frank Shamrock and Zinoviev? I was shocked at that outcome.
Right, yeah.
With
Zinoviev went to work on for Epstein.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's something you could dig somebody up. Probably be hard to do. But.
He got Oleg Tiktarov on, I think it's our 3rd interview we ever did. And Oleg was just like, the things that this guy was involved with are unspeakable. We clipped it out. It was like the one YouTube little clip that we thought for sure would have 40, 50, 60,000 views on it. And I think we only got a couple hundred, and I think the algorithms kind of stifle things like that. So,
yeah, it's funny how that happens, huh?
Yeah, it's weird, even though it's like real life events that actually happen, and there's like real victims, and yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
Now, what did you think when, because obviously you were around the sport from the beginning pretty much as well. What did you think about when SEG crossed over to Zuffa back when you were?
I think that happened because when we interviewed Bob Myrowitz, he is like one of those $2,000 an hour attorneys that you've got very limited time with, and he gave us all the time we wanted. Didn't restrict us from questions. And what I think happened was he got burned out. He was tired. He got a perpetuity deal, and he still gets a check today. Because when we asked, one of the Fertittas was on the board that didn't allow things to pass, but then he buys the UFC. Now you've got somebody that clearly should be angry. And he's like, no, they've done a great job. I think he's done quite well for himself financially. I also think that there was a battle between him and Art Davie, where I've got it pinpointed. I think it was right around the Pedro Hizo Mark Coleman fight. Because that's when Bob kind of told Art he's no longer getting TV time, and Bob was going to take TV time. In essence, I think what took place was Myrowitz was the money. Art Davie was kind of the guy moving the puzzle pieces around, and Art was kind of positioning for respect in the locker room, and those things were getting back to Bob. Bob didn't appreciate them, and it just kind of made those waters rocky. I think they got rid of Art right around UFC 20, right before they went to Japan, and at that point, he gets rid of him, buys him out, and then he moves and sells to the UFC. I think he positioned himself strategically, financially, with that spot.
Do you think Art gets a check as well, or no?
What's that?
I wonder if Art has a check
No,
every month.
for sure no. For sure no. He got a buyout. You know what's really weird? All right, so Andy Anderson is in prison right now. Are you familiar with his story?
Somewhat. I don't know if I remember it off the top of my head, but I remember he got in trouble.
All right, so Andy Anderson was like a steak and strip club owner in Texas. And he had quite a few restaurants that were doing very well. And in essence, he becomes infatuated with the UFC. If you watch, I think UFC 2 or 3, you will see him with like handing the ring card girls like the ring cards to kind of walk around with. So Andy Anderson, like, he's infatuated with the sport. He's got a ton of money. Most of it he's probably not paying taxes on, and convinces Art Davie to leave the UFC so they can compete with the UFC in a rival organization, of which Art does. And then, because I think the waters were rocky anyway, and then what happens is he gets hit with federal charges of selling drugs in his own restaurants, but he never touched the drugs. There's no text messages or emails saying that he was involved in any way, but there was like nightclub managers selling coke out of there, and they couldn't prove that he was getting the money, but they kind of knew he was, and he just said, no, I'm not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And when you fight a federal case, the longer you fight it, the more your time increases, and he ended up taking like 20 years. So yeah, and I just, dude, I wrote him a letter, and I got a response back. We're hoping to interview him, actually.
You're so dedicated, I'd be like nervous to write a letter to an inmate, but you were in law enforcement, so it probably doesn't make you nervous.
Yeah, no, I don't care. Yeah, no, I don't care. So I think we're gonna have him on the next.
Down and like, would they? I doubt they'd have you do it on video. It'd probably be like some sort of, or maybe they could. I don't know.
I don't think it's probably gonna be a phone interview. I know those aren't real popular, but like we get a ton of downloads, like on iTunes and Spotify. So we put it on both, but the majority of the views will probably be over there.
I think it was fairly recently, I saw something that's like they have like a FaceTime type, whatever it is, apparatus where they can do like calls similar to FaceTime.
I hope that works out. I'd really like to get Andy on, get his story. I thought that the feds really kind of screwed him. Like I looked into his case, and I really kind of was, just kind of looking for that aha. He might be lying. He might be lying. I think he got done dirty, man.
And when you do Fed time, you're going to do most of it, right?
I'm doing 80% of it. And, the thing about the feds is they have like a 98% conviction rate.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2% that they don't have, like that they usually kick those down to like local or regional law enforcement, where the success rate is almost 100% there as well. So there's probably under 15 people alive that have beat federal cases. Yeah, they bleed you out financially. Like it's a horrible system, man. Like in terms of it's a different system too. Like they tell you they got you, and then a year from now we're going to go to court against you. Like it's a weird system. It's strange.
Unless they just pick you up right off the bat. Like,
Yeah, but they pick you up, they charge you, unless it's like physical or sex crimes or things of that nature, or somebody dying. If it's financial, they let you do whatever it is you do for 7, 8, 9 months before you go to trial. Yeah, it's really
guys,
strange.
like a target letter.
Yeah, they come in, they charge you, and then they let you leave. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, because surrounding this whole Mike Miskey thing that I had talked about a little bit, the lead prosecutor, which is Keith Kaneshiro, he got a target letter from the feds right around that same time.
Right.
But
So,
it's never come to light what the result of that was,
well, here, like, if I were to give anybody advice in regards to federal cases, and this advice would normally cost you thousands of dollars, it's really simple. If you've got nothing to hide and you like the person, go last. Like if they give you an internet like a interview date for like Wednesday, tell them the morning of you're not feeling good, reschedule it. That way, what happens is all you do is confirm what everybody else has told them, and then you don't even have to testify, and you're not really ratting on anybody. Um, if you get called and you are guilty, you have to assume your last 9 months of your phone calls or text messages, emails, any correspondence has been listened or read. So you just got to be first in line to make a deal. You got to. The gig is up. Like there's no hiding anything. There's no. Well, you sold out. You sold out. The gig is up. If it's a federal case, they've listened for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So I mean, that's really your two options.
But if you're the main target, you really don't have anything to give up
Well,
on.
if you're the main target, you go in and like what I said to my initial business partner, Viet Nguyen is his name. What I told him was when they raided his office, I just said, "Hey, listen, man, before they even open a single file, go and take the time. Just go and take it. Just go, hey, before we even do anything, I'll just plead guilty. Just give me the best deal possible. You guys have done, very little work up until this point. Let's just figure this out." He refused. Ended up taking I think a little over 8 years.
Yeah, that's the thing I was talking about with this Miskey case. Since they took the death penalty off the table and all he could get is basically life, which they would probably go for, they really have nothing to offer him.
Well, all right. So corruption in law enforcement, that's kind of, a hot topic that everybody likes to talk about, but they really don't key on like some of the obvious areas that they should. And in essence, when you take the death penalty off, one, the death penalty is, I guess it's juicy for like clicks and headlines and things of that nature, but it's incredibly expensive, and the process is just very arduous for everybody involved, including the housing of the inmate. So usually that coming off the table is usually the first thing. It's pretty easy to subtract that. And then what they try to do is, like, who wants to be in Alaska, in a federal pen to where you can't go outside often? So they kind of use where they place you. But then, like, if you look at some of the old Italian, like, mobsters that took federal time, 20, 30 years of federal time, what they would do is they would screw with their housing in order to continue to get information out of them. To me, that's unethical. Like, if the guy's taking his time, he's sitting in jail, leave him alone. Let him do his thing. Like, you got your pound of flesh, and now when they come in and they brag about it, well, yeah, so then we started bouncing them all over the country. We kept them on a bus for 72 hours in shackles and handcuffs. Like, that's not ethical. Like, and that's something that absolutely takes place. Like, I don't agree with that. I think law enforcement that even participates in something like that, I think you're a scumbag.
But my question is, I'm just curious about this. I know it's kind of off topic, but some of his guys were involved in MMA. But what I'm saying is he's kind of the top guy.
You think he's got to take a hit?
It's a murder charge. You know, he was involved with the death of maybe at least one, more than one person possibly, but one for sure. They aren't going to let him get less than life, most likely. So what do they have to offer him?
Housing, where you're housed. Denver, Colorado in January, February, December is probably miserable. You know, Tampa, Florida is probably much nicer. So it's just more like where you're going to be.
And they could get someone to talk just out of that.
Man, when you think about it, yeah. 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 Well, I mean, what's there talking? He's already caught.
He's had like 6 or 7 guys flip on him.
You have to.
All the guys. Yeah. So he's probably going to lose. So now it's just, is he going to talk or not?
Well, here, Ted, let me ask you. Him talking or not, it doesn't matter. But let me ask you a question. Like, let's just say you're involved with those guys. You're part of their crew. Everybody's caught. And then they come to see you and they say, well, you can take 8 years for this and admit this publicly, or you can take 20 years and keep your mouth shut. You're caught. Everybody's done. You know, I mean, it's like, hey, you want to keep your mouth shut and ride with the ship? Cool. But, you know, you're kind of doing the math in your head of getting out and, you know, actually having a life left. You know, it's interesting.
What's left for the biggest guy? All the other guys have flipped, obviously. But there's no way they could get him to roll on somebody who hasn't been spoken of yet.
Yeah, you're the top guy. You're the top guy.
Yeah.
You know, like there was an inmate at Cook County Jail. He was like maybe 67 years old. Old cat, heavyset. Used to love beating up the young kids. Like the young kids that would come in and misbehave or act a little crazy. He would get in fist fights with these kids all day long, and he would whoop them. And he was like the champion of just like the old cats. Like he had gray hair, he had a belly. And, you know, when you talk to him, he would say, man, they got me. It is what it is. They're offering me 16 years. In 16 years, I'm going to be dead. Even if, and he was robbing drug dealers. Like he didn't really have any real innocent people in his background. And he's just like, I'm going to die if I take that 16 years. So I'm just pleading innocent. Then I'm like, oh, okay, you're going to take it to a jury trial where, you know, you get 12 people, pick, you know, and you try to convince one of them and maybe get a hung jury. And he goes, nah, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm just going to take it to the judge. You know, let the judge decide. And I'm like, if you take it to a trial and let the judge decide, like either way, when you go to a jury trial, you're getting slammed. Like whatever the maximum is, that's what you're going to get. And he's just like, yeah, but I'm going to die here anyway, man. I don't really care. He's like, fuck it. Let the judge give it to me. I'll ride out. You know, no complaints, no nothing. No big deal. And I said, well, how does the evidence look against you? He's like, man, I am so guilty. He's like, not only did I do it, but the evidence is so overwhelming that the judge is going to scratch his head, and he's not going to believe that I took this shit to to the bench. Is what it is, man. I don't care. Well, one day I come in and he's not there, and I'm like, oh, did he get shipped? And all the inmates are like, no, man. The judge said, based on his record and his understanding of going through the system, there is nobody that is as stupid as it would be to bring this case to the bench thinking that they were going to get out unless they were innocent. So, I mean, it's just, there's different ways people play the system, man. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, the guy beat his case on something he told everybody, including on the recorded phones, that he did. Mm-hmm. You know, Minsky, he's not going anywhere. The stress that a trial puts on somebody takes years off of their life. The food in prison is terrible. Like, it's bologna sandwiches. I mean, he could stay in, like, if I'm him, I'm pleading guilty and asking to stay in Hawaii so my friends, family, and children can come see me. You know, it's a position I'd never want to put myself in. but that's his option.
That's interesting because I was just curious where you saw it going, but
Yeah, I mean, here, do you want to stay on the island, or do you want your family to have to fly to Alaska to visit you? I mean, that's pretty good. Would you not agree?
yeah. Now, kind of on that subject, since you spent a lot of time talking about this, maybe who are some of the worst guys you saw in MMA as far as that goes, reputation-wise?
Oh God,
Jamie Levine.
I've had fighters that I've had to bond out of jail to kind of make weigh-ins. I had 2 fighters that killed people. Yeah, there's a kind of a criminal element that you can just kind of see and you stay away from them. Like shitty promoters, I'll say some of the shittiest promoters. Brad Kohler is up there. Dan Severn is another one. Dan Severn is just a horrible promoter. It's shocking that he's got a really good reputation amongst certain circles. Anytime he fights on a card and we're interviewing somebody, I always ask, hey, did you see his fight? Was it real? Was it fake? I mean, he was doing fixed fights for 10 grand at one point. He'd do them in your hometown and put you over for like 10, 15 grand. So
yeah, I heard some stuff to that on the forums.
He doesn't care either. And if you look at his business associates, 3 of them have been locked up and pled guilty for some stuff involving children. So it's weird. It's kind of a reoccurring theme for him.
You would think he would not want to surround himself with those people, given his image of he was an early UFC kind of pioneer.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Yeah. That's kind of what we like talking about it. He doesn't care, but no one's talking about it, so we will. We'll talk about it. I'd even have him on. I'd even do an in-person interview if he allowed it.
Yeah, and like Fry, who does the podcast with him.
I think Fry is just doesn't understand, what's going on. Fry's like an old school cat. I like Don. Just throwback guy.
Yeah. What about Jamie Levine?
See, Jamie Levine is somebody that we like to kind of get stories on. I never met him, but I know a lot of things about the guy. I mean, obviously he's passed. Your typical predator, but he had a way of getting money out of people. He was really good at that in regards to bankers and sponsoring his events. He did some amazing shows. You know, might be a good interview for you is Johnny Walls, who was his technical guy that was with Jamie every step of the way. Johnny Walls would be a really good interview in regards to Jamie Levine.
Is he an easy guy to reach?
Yes, he's all over social media. Very easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check him out. Dean Thomas, talked to him about Jamie. I mean, Jamie kind of managed him to some degree early in his career. So he kind of talked a little bit about Jamie to me when I interviewed him.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think Din's on our short list. We're going to get to him. I know he's super busy with the UFC right now, doing kind of comedy sketches for their social media. Cool guy, though. Super cool cat.
Yeah, it's interesting that they do comedy sketches and stuff so much.
Well, here, you were in Japan when all of the Yakuza stuff was going on. Who were some of the scariest guys you were dealing with?
Well, I didn't deal with people, but like AG, who you talked to Ensign about, I knew AG. He'd come in the gym and work out. He mostly lifted weights. I remember one time he asked me, he knew that I lived kind of in the Yokosuka area. Mm-hmm. And I was at the gym that day, but I had a kidney infection the day before. So I was on all the meds from the military. I thought I was going to die a couple of days before that. I really did. That's how bad I felt. I woke up, I was sweating all over my bed. I was peeing blood and all sorts of stuff. And of course the military, they're like, okay, come in. You still have to come in, So I had to walk to the train station, get on the train. People are staring at me I looked like a zombie. You know, I was all pale. And I got to my work, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, you know, you need to go to the doctor." You know, but they didn't let you. It's not like you can call and say, "Hey, I don't feel good. Stay home."
Yeah, yeah. So
So
did
I
he know
go,
you were sick, or
I was sick. Yeah, I had a
so
kidney
did he
infection.
know this? You said you mentioned it.
Oh, AG, yeah, he was saying we're gonna have a party. I think it was tomorrow or that night. And he said, "Do you want to go?" And I said, "No." And I remember he looked at me like, "What do you mean, no?" You know, it's like in Japan, you don't say that kind of stuff. And Ryan Bowe was there, and he said, "Oh, his kidney's infected." You know, and he kind of looked at me like he didn't believe me. You know, I was laying on the ground. You know, it's not like I was training. I was laying on the ground, and he said, "Yeah, his kidney's infected. He's just laying on the ground. That's why he's laying there like that." He just said, you know, he looked
Was
like he
it
didn't
just
believe.
kind of scary living over there at that time?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think that's kind of things that people think from like the
Yeah,
movies or whatever. Like,
yeah, yeah.
well, they really don't care about people like me. Yeah. There was an incident while I was there. This guy was in Hiroshima, and he was walking across a military guy, and he was walking across the crosswalk. And the Yakuza guy had pulled up to the crosswalk. I think the nose of his car was sticking a little bit into the crosswalk. And the military guy said something to him, and the guy just got out and shot him. And then he drove up. He drove up just a little ways up the road, pulled into a bar, and sat down. You know, like nothing.
So
He shot
guns
him.
are illegal in Japan
He
too.
shot him
Yeah.
to the side, so he knew he hadn't killed him. He kind of shot him like, you know, just kind of grazed him a little bit, enough
Are
to
they that
drop.
brazen? They're that brazen over there, huh?
Yeah, up to the bar, pulled up. You know, the police came in to get him. You know, and but yeah, he said I just shot him in the side. It's not like I was trying
So
to
is
kill
there
him.
any repercussions for people that do that there, or do they just kind of?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Ensign, you know, I know when you talk to Ensign, I'm sure he was in jail with some of these guys, you know, in prison. I don't know how much he told you about his situation when he got busted, you know, but the
Yeah, we didn't
police
bring it
approached.
up.
He had marijuana cigarettes in the sunroof of his vehicle, and the police approached him. He was parked. You know, they didn't pull him over. They walked up to him and asked to look in his vehicle.
Somebody pointed fingers at him. Okay.
But he did, yeah. But that's kind of. I knew another guy. He went into one of these bars where Americans weren't supposed to be. It had a little sign that said "No Americans," but he couldn't read it. And he went in there, and they were telling him to leave. He wouldn't leave. You know, he had been drinking a little bit.
It's incredibly
And,
racist. It's an incredibly racist country that gets such a pass. Like
and
if you had,
one police officer came in there with a kendo stick. One little small guy. You know, and this is a pretty big military guy. And I think the military's guy, like, I'm just going to take the stick from you. You know, that guy clobbered him. That little guy with the kendo stick beat him bad. You know, like really bad. You know? So, yeah, but I would say from a danger standpoint, like if you ask Ensign, if you kind of hung out in certain areas, like certain areas of like Kabukicho area,
Mhm.
it's kind of like there's an alleyway where there's a lot of Yakuza there. If you wandered in there, someone like you or me, they might tell you to leave. They're not going to jump us. You know, they know that you're just you're
Foreigner,
not
yeah.
there to be involved with them to begin with. They probably know that. You know, some of the young guys might pop off to you or something, but they're usually just going to tell you to get lost. They know you're not there to do business with them. You know, they
Can you
know you're not.
imagine that?
They know you're not part of a rival family, so they're not. You
Isn't
know,
it
it's not.
wild? Just like how prevalent racism is and accepted there.
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty
it is.
shocking.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes I can understand why they don't want like some people in some of their establishments, especially around the military bases. Like the base where I was at, there was a jail down the road. Half of the people in it were military people, not Japanese people, military. You know, there was like a prison down the
Wow.
road from the Alaska base. So yeah, they have a lot of problems. You know, people go in these places and tear them up, or
Okay, but that's the definition of racism, though. We have problems with a
they,
few people, so we're going to punish everybody for it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like it's wild. It's wild how much they get away with over there. And
But
Eric
the
Paulson,
military, the military, they really don't want their guys in these establishments, really. If they had their way, they would just not be able to go in any of these places where you can drink because
yeah,
they're having to get these guys out of jail, get them off the street. They get called to all these places. You know, they probably, if they had their way, they probably be more than happy with them not being able to go in these establishments, actually.
Eric Paulson never made more than $1,500 a fight, and he was the first American, I think, Shudo champion,
Right.
and he was just like, yeah, no, they didn't like me because I was American.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But I
Yeah,
mean, he was back at a time when no one was getting money, you know,
yeah.
so
Well, yeah, it's possible too. It's true. It's true. But still, 1,500 is nothing. Like and that's very little money. So who's on your docket? Who are you interviewing next?
man, I'm all over the place. Sometimes I've been interviewing a lot of female fighters lately because I really hadn't done any of that. So I was, doing some of that because all my first 100 shows or so, or however many I had done up to this point, were all guys, you know. So I thought email some interview some female athletes. I did the show with you. I'm trying to do this one with Landon Dykstra-House. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he did some documentaries on the sport. One was a weight cutting documentary that it got some buzz, but I think it's kind of died down a little bit. But it's
Back in the
interesting.
day, I told Chris Brennan on more than one occasion, just online, he should do a documentary on weight cutting. All types of disclaimers. Don't do this at home, but
Yeah,
because he had it down to a science.
yeah, he was doing a lot of hardcore weight cutting. But the
Yeah.
UFC, Dykstra-House had done I'm trying to remember the female that he did the documentary on, but the UFC had basically said, we'll help you cut this weight. I'm trying to remember what the girl's name was. They cut her, even though I think she won her fight, but it was because of this weight issue or whatever. But I got to send you some footage on that because he made the rounds. He did some interviews. There were people who kind of challenged him on some of it, and just
Yeah,
like any other.
there was a girl, I want to say she's either from Colombia or Peru, got signed to the UFC, and then USADA showed up, and there was a big issue with USADA, taking her urine or blood, and she got fired before she even,
Yep,
had a fight scheduled.
that's right. Yeah, I forgot her name, but yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. But I mean, if you're not willing to take the test, it's not
I
necessarily shocking that they would do that.
No, but you also got to look at it like a lot of times these people, they're coming without ID. They want to take it like in a bathroom where there's airborne contaminants. Like look at Neil Magny. He had to go to a Home Depot bathroom where the soap and the cleaning agents and stuff like that. Like Neil Magny's a clean fighter, and he took a steroid suspension, and like the steroid that he tested positive for had like a real long like life in your body, and like a couple days before he passed, and the subsequent test after he passed. So it's like, well, when could this have been in his system? So I'm not a real big fan of USADA, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of a dog and pony show, and I think it hurts more than it helps. And what he did with Jon Jones, I think, is despicable. Like they clearly lied to cover up for him.
Yeah,
Do you
no
think
doubt.
Jon Jones is going to fight again?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
He keeps saying he is.
There's too much time and space. Like if you look at his arrests and his craziness, um, if you look at it and what's going on with him, there's too much time and space, and he's no longer with his fiance, with the children, so he's living alone now. This guy's partying every day. Like from what I am told is, it's not really powder cocaine that he's into. It's the rock form. And when somebody kind of goes down that road, it's a scary path.
So you think he's still got
Why wouldn't he
issues?
be? Why wouldn't he be? What do you do? 24 hours in rehab?
It's a good point.
He's not
You're in
fighting
Las
again.
Vegas. This is the way you think, So, I
He's
mean,
not
I
fighting
was
again. Like,
about it. I see him making tweets all the time about
he
how
can
he
tweet
can't.
all he wants.
Yeah.
He's not fighting again. Like I said it right after his last incident, where there's an interesting story behind what took place in Vegas. We're trying to get Mark Coleman back on to talk about it. I'll let Mark tell it rather than that of myself. But like it's that Vegas, there's a lot there that people aren't talking about.
Oh, Mark was there when that all went down.
It was a Hall of Fame night. Kevin Randleman got inducted, and Mark gave one of the speeches.
Right.
Let me tell you how bad Mark Coleman is, man. He was in his 40s, early 40s. He's at a seminar or doing a seminar, and Jon Jones is there. And Jones is champion at the time, is talking shit to Coleman. So what happens is Sims calls me up going, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "Okay, well, what?" He's like, "Coleman wants to fight Jon Jones." And I just start laughing. I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." He's like, No, he's serious." Gets Mark on the phone, like on a three-way conversation, and he goes, "Tell him, Mark." He's like, "Yep, doing a seminar, doing my thing." Jon Jones starts coming up, talking a little smack. I'm not listening to it. He's a junior college wrestler, He's talking to me about my wrestling credentials. This guy might as well wrestled in grammar school and talk to me about it. That's the difference between us. So they do up to 5 takedowns. Like whoever gets to 5 first wins. And I don't know if you know much about Coleman and his wrestling ability, but
Yeah.
Evan Randleman never took Mark down in practice. Nick Nutter never took Mark down. Brandon Lee Hinkle never took Mark down. You'd be hard pressed. Like we had Pat Miletich on there saying Matt Hughes took him down and Steve Rusk took him down. Coleman called me up flipping out. They didn't take me down. Didn't happen. And I think Pat did it just to kind of get under Mark's skin a little bit, just like as a joke. But
Yeah.
he never got taken down in an MMA fight until he was after the age of 40. Everybody's talking about Usman being like the number 1 takedown defense guy. One, I thought Colby got a takedown in the last fight with him. Daniel Cormier also said it. But Coleman, for sure, even in his losses of fights, never got taken down. So Mark said he got up to 5-0 quick. And Jones kept going. And then it was 8-0. And Jones threw a spinning elbow trying to like crack Mark, and people had to break him up. And Mark he was on fire. He's just like, people are afraid of him before they get to that ring. I own Jones. I own him. I'm in his head. I could win that title again. It's just like a 42, 43-year-old Mark Coleman was on fire. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how dominant Mark's wrestling was. And they also had rules in place to kind of take away knees of opponent that's down. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they created rules, like, against Mark Coleman. And if headbutts and knees on a down opponent, were allowed, he would still be champion today. Like, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that could take Mark down. He lost
Yeah,
4
I agree.
to one of the Schultz brothers, and the Schultz brothers never took him down. It was in the periods where the wrestler has to start in a down position. They got a couple quick back points, and that was it. Like, Mark is one of the most difficult people in all of wrestling to ever get a takedown on.
Like I did a short video saying that I thought Kerr, at the time that he first started out, was the scariest heavyweight ever. And Mark sent me a message said I would have taken Kerr.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. Kerr says, "Yeah, I don't know what'll happen. I don't know what happened." Coleman's like, "I would destroy Kerr." Like, you see the two, like, and you talk to Mark, like, "Why are you so confident?" And he'll tell you, "Ask Kerr how many times he took me down when we were on the wrestling team together. Ask him how many times." I think that number's 0.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, that is crazy.
Now, what do you think of this Masvidal Colby situation? Since you just brought up Colby.
Well, people are shitting on Colby because he's pressing charges, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you really look at it, One, he lost 2 teeth, and he got a lot of damage to a Rolex watch. Did Masvidal have something in his hand that he hit him with? That's possible. 2, how did he know Colby was there? Was there somebody at that table texting Masvidal? The Nelk Boys podcast, I've never heard of them until I read about it. You know, there's probably a reason I never heard of them. They're incredibly popular, and I'm kind of old and crusty. But at the end of the day, guys, sent a text to Masvidal. Dude, Colby Covington's about to make a shitload of money. Like, this is going to be his biggest payday ever. Ever. You got George Masvidal that just signed a record-setting contract for the UFC. And now you got somebody with a podcast that has obvious assets that may have set him up. He's got to press charges. He's got no choice.
So he can stand to make millions. They'll probably try to settle with him.
They're going to have to settle, but it's going to be a settlement that hurts. Like, you know, when you settle, it's both parties aren't exactly happy, but both say, okay, that's the perfect settlement because no one got over and it's kind of where it's supposed to be. Colby Covington is about to have his biggest payday. And, you know, that's something that nobody's covering. I think journalism is really poor right now, as I think you will attest to. There's obvious questions and avenues that need to be asked or even talked about that they refuse to even bring up. And it's not because they're covering it, just because they don't know. They're just not smart enough to kind of really figure that situation out.
But I mean, from a law enforcement perspective, you have a background in that many, many years. So I know you just kind of described it, but maybe for people that don't understand him pressing charge, you kind of said, well, maybe yet. I guess you kind of just already described it, but
he has to press charges. Here, if he presses charges, he can sue like criminally, as well as like he could talk about like his brand gets hurt, his image got hurt. So there's a civil component of that lawsuit as well, and that civil component is probably going to open him up to seeing the text messages on what was happening at that table at that steak dinner that he was at. He's going to be able to see what was on Jorge's phone, and he's going to be able to see what's on all of their phones as well. He may have been set up. So now, let's think about this. If you're Colby Covington, you do a podcast with these guys, you go to dinner with them, and the guys that took you to dinner did so and told the guy where you were at, and then you get beat up. Like, that goes beyond, hey, man, you know, you got to go kick his butt or that person's butt. It goes way beyond that. Like, if you're doing that to people, you're kind of a piece of shit. So, I don't know. I think when it comes out in about 2 years and everything gets laid out, I think people are going to realize, I think Jorge Masvidal, he's going to do whatever he does. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not at that level, you know, probably never will be, but you can see he's got an incredible social media presence, and he's got an understanding of what the fans want. He's the hottest fighter in MMA right now. For sure. Like, after he got arrested, people got jealous and got arrested. You saw McGregor get arrested because he wanted some fame, too. It was kind of like the in thing to do. But that podcast, the Nelk Boys podcast, that's making millions of dollars a year, they might have a new minority owner coming on board. Yeah, they're in trouble. Those guys are in trouble. He has to do this with Colby has to press charges in order to see exactly what took place. Like, I didn't watch the video in its completion. I try to stay away from that stuff. But the little soundbite I did hear was, how would he have known I was here? How would he have known this? So, yeah, I think even one of the people on the podcast even said, hey, I think this guy may have set him up. Like, somebody on the podcast publicly stated that they believe somebody that they co-host with was possibly the person that did it. So, I don't know. I think Colby Covington's about to get his biggest payday. That's my personal opinion.
And you're right. No one's really bringing this up very much.
No, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
We need to start like a news. you should do
news, baby.
Yeah, like Mike Davis breaks MMA's most controversial.
Fake news. Yeah.
Because I see some other guys try to do that, but you're coming from a law enforcement perspective. Oh, like the Cain Velasquez thing. Let's talk about that quick. Because, like I said, you have a law enforcement
All right,
background.
so
Explain to people what's going on here.
okay, so Cain Velasquez, what I do know is this. Well, first off, Todd, you would have to handle all of our social media because if we were going to do MMA news, you're the only two out of us that are qualified to even understand what that entails. But Cain Velasquez, if I were to give advice to Cain, when you get brought in front of the judge, here's the issue. It's twofold. It's really hard. One, it's really touchy subject material. Nobody can blame Cain for what he did. Everybody talks about it. He did it. Man, he's got to look at himself in the mirror. Tons of props to the guy. But when you're in front of the judge for a bond hearing and the judge asks you your intent prior to them setting the bond, and you say, when I leave here, I'm going to kill that guy, they can't let you out.
Oh, is that what he did?
That's what he did. And nobody's talking about that. So that's absolutely what he did.
And
Sometimes,
how did you know that?
huh?
How did you know that?
Miguel Durante told me. He pays attention to that shit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I heard that.
So, but nobody's talking about that. Like, it's like there's so many different components. It's, all right, well, I read this headline, so I'm just going to report what I read rather than dig. Like, when you dig a little bit, you kind of understand the situation a little bit more. So,
Can you explain to people why they would let the other guy walk from a legal perspective?
Oh, for sure. It's very easy. So this guy sexually abused, like, I'm not going to say hundreds of children, sexually abused many children hundreds of times. In our country, people always scream about, oh, there's two justices, there's two justices. Dude, there's really not. There's like, unless you give me a hard example, and I can say, okay, yeah, that example's bad. Okay, that example's good. But just to kind of like paint with a broad brush, what you're trying to do is just inflame people just to kind of get reactions. But like, there's no real teeth there. When you want to talk about dual justice, like legitimate dual justice, it's with child sex predators. There's very, very little teeth that punish them unless it's federal. Like if you're Travis Fulton's creating child pornography and sending it across state lines, that's one thing. Like you'll get hammered for that. But just diddling children, like the guy that molested all those kids, probably get like 3 years, 4 years. He's out on bond.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to explain because people, they want to know why he's out on bond. So I'm asking you from a lot. Can you make understand why that happens?
Yeah, no, it's normal. Our justice system caters to child sex predators, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That is true, and this example is not something that's abnormal. That's what happens. That's what happens. If you molest children, more often than not, you get a bond. Even if
they have like slam dunk evidence, is that true?
Yeah, they don't care. They just wait for it to go to trial. Yeah, and like how they get around the sex offender registry. Let's just pretend somebody that's a sex predator has money, which yeah, I mean, it happens. I think the majority are kind of more on the low end of the financial spectrum, but there are quite a few on the high end of the spectrum. What happens is they delay their case, and in certain states like Illinois, which is where I'm at, you can delay your case 10 years. Easy. And just let the state spend tons and tons of money just fighting you, and they see the bill that's associated with fighting your case, and they give you the best possible deal because they just want you to go away on the sex offender list. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I wanted to bring someone on who could explain to people why one guy's in and one guy's out.
Yeah, no, that's normal.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it's absolutely normal. Like
I'm glad you could. I see a lot of this. Not necessarily, no, not to me. I'm saying the MMA community as a whole.
It's
I know
puzzling.
people in law.
Yeah, it's puzzling to people that are good people because they can't wrap their head around, like, why is this person out on bail? That's what happens when you molest children. You get a
Even
bail. You get a
bail. Here in Tulsa, I mean, even violent offenders get bail. People that are dangerous people.
We have actual rapists and actual murderers on house arrest here. And our politicians are like, well, we had no idea they'd be violating their house arrest. And I'm going to tell you another thing. What they do is they'll get like a battery charging pack, like a portable charger. And what they do is they'll unplug their house arrest, like not the band because the band's around their ankle, but like the device, and they'll plug it into their portable charger. And as long as you don't break like the fencing, like the geo-fencing of the band, it doesn't like call or alarm, the people that are monitoring you. So we have people that get arrested in Chicago with a duffel bag with their house arrest like port in the bag. From what I'm told since I left, they now have GPS inside of them, but there's thousands of them that don't. They emptied Cook County Jail, one of the largest on-site like facilities, like housing facilities, pre-detention facilities, and they put everybody at home. Everybody's at home. Yeah, it's disgusting. And like right now it's election time, now they're all denying it. Well, I had no part of it. Well, here's the article with your name and quotes in it, like from like a year and a half ago, stating that there should be truth in sentencing. It's just, dude, it's a game. It's a game. And what they do is these people up top, they need us fighting so they can do whatever it is they want. It's disgusting. I'm glad I left law enforcement. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are leaving law enforcement.
The good people are leaving. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But how do you get people in?
Dude, I don't know. That's above my pay grade. Don't know, don't care. I got out. I don't know. Like, I got opinions, but I think people might get upset by them. So I'm going to keep it to myself.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to do this. I know we've talked for a while.
Well, Dad, you've helped me out with Ensign. I think we're going to kind of reroute his way with Ensign anyway. We got a unique angle. We're going to go with him. So we sincerely appreciate it. It's one of our better interviews, too. Ensign is just so charismatic and says a lot of things he probably shouldn't. And I know I thanked you in the interview as well. And, once again, thank you for connecting us.
What you should do is just ask him, hey, where do these kind of families hang out? He'd tell you all this stuff because I met guys through him, but it wasn't guys that I knew on a personal level. Like, I remember going to a Shuto event with him, and there was two guys sitting in front of us, and he said, yeah, this guy's like the top guy in this family, and blah, blah, blah. Incredible. But they were just like old people, just like any other old person you would see walking down the street. Had he not told me that, I would think nothing of it.
It's cool. Good.
And AG, like I said about AG was a little bit more, he was a young gang member, so yeah, if you pissed him off, he'd probably be more likely to say something. Yeah. But the older guys,
cool. All right, Todd, I got to get going. I got to go teach a boxing class. Let me hit you, buddy. Do your thing. Always a pleasure. Anytime you need me, I'm on. Okay?
Check out Lytesout Podcast with Mike Davis.
Be good, brother.
Take care.